Let's go to our guest line. If you happen to be watching us on QSportsTalk.com, you see our lone guest today. Pleased to be joined by Christian DeGuzman, writer for News Magician. Christian, always great to have you on. And football season is back upon us. At least the preseason is. Day one in the books yesterday. The second practice set for this afternoon. Just your observations. I know it was one practice. I know it was a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it was for the media. Any takeaways for you?
Boy, there's a lot of people on this team now. I know Fran wanted to increase the number of people on the team based on walk-on counts from the spring, and there's a lot of bodies on the field now in terms of not just scholarship players and the freshmen who have come in since spring ball, but also some extra bodies and some extra walk-ons, and I think that really helps Fran set the pace and tempo that he wants this football team to have. And you see that in just how they practice. Everyone's hustling. There seems to be an urgency to what everyone needs to be doing and where they need to go and what they have to do in order to impress their coaches. So I think there's a lot of different vibes that you see from previous training camps and just previous practices in general, which is what carried over from spring practice.
We were talking about the quarterback position in the last segment, specifically the backup quarterback spot. How important do you think that is for them to identify that sooner rather than later? And do you think that the starting quarterback in 2025 is on the roster right now?
Yeah, I overheard a little bit of that conversation you guys were having, and I don't think that starting quarterback is on the roster right now, because there was a 11v11 session that happened between after initial stretches that were happening before the players went off to individual drills, and it was 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s, 4v4s, and you could see there's just an immense talent gap between Kyle McCord and the rest of the quarterback room, and it's going to take a lot for one of those guys to step up and upstart and really claim the position for next year. You don't have Michael Johnson Jr. for next year, so that's an option gone. How much does Carlos Del Rio Wilson improve? Can Jakari Williams get over the freshman bump? Those are your two options, Carlos Del Rio Wilson and Jakari Williams. And if you're not confident that CDRW or Williams can make a significant jump next year, like you guys said, they're going to have to go portaling again.
What do you look at as the biggest question mark heading into camp for this team? Is it the offensive line? Is it something else for you?
It's the offensive line. I think it's always been for this team. And we saw a glimpse of what at least the way too early, I would call it, starting offensive line would look like. For Syracuse fans who are familiar with the offensive line, at least from what I saw in the ones, there was no Enrique Cruz on the left side. He was actually replaced by Demarius Witherspoon as the starters. And on the right side, it was the Colorado transfer, Savion Washington, as the other tackle, with the guards being Jacob Bradford, Mark Petrie, and the center being John Ray Reed. So it's an interesting offensive line already to go out with. Obviously, first week of training camp, that could very easily change before we get to the Ohio game for the first week of the season. But if the offensive line can't keep Kyle McCord clean and can't open up big holes for LeQuint Allen, I don't think this team gets very far.
You obviously saw that the ACC poll is out. Syracuse is 12th in that poll. Paulie came to the table today with CBS putting out its preseason poll of all FBS schools. Syracuse checked in at number 68. It's making my co-host here a little nervous that Syracuse is, certainly on the bottom half, 10, 11, 12 in the conference. What do you make of these preseason projections, and does it take any steam out of the sails of your expectations, I guess, going into this new year with Fran Brown?
I don't think it does. I think for a lot of these preseason projections, unless you've got people like, a David Hale from ESPN or specific conference media members really putting their heads together about these polls, it's kind of just a shot in the dark, really, especially with how so many people just in the media world in general have seen the improvement in Syracuse just based on the roster additions they made. I don't think it's too big of a concern. It's it will always come down to the scheduling of Syracuse, how far it can go, and you've got that October stretch, which will basically once again decide the season, like it did last year. But to put too much stock in these recent preseason polls, I think is a little bit, reaching out too far and making a bigger problem out of nothing.
We've talked a lot about the offense and Kyle McCord and the upgrade at the skill position players. What do you think about the defense? What stands out to you on that side of the ball?
I think it's the same that you've seen from defenses past for this Syracuse team, especially in recent times. The strength is obviously in the linebacker and safety positions. And when you've got Marlo Wax really leading that charge strong in the linebacker position, you've got a three-headed monster at safety with Elijah Clark, Justin Barron, and now Deuce Chestnut heading into that safety room. It's going to be very, very hard to beat Syracuse over the middle. The questions do come, how much has the defensive line improved when you add Fadil Diggs and Dion Wilson Jr., who has been a standout for the Syracuse coaching staff, both in spring practice and in summer workouts, and also who steps up at cornerback alongside Jaden Bellamy, who you would assume gets one of the starting cornerback spots. Is it Devin Grant, the Buffalo transfer? Is it someone like Marcellus Barnes, who we've seen a lot in spring practice and got some reps with the onesie yesterday? If Syracuse can figure out the answers to those questions quickly, it seems like a pretty good defense once again.
I brought up the ACC preseason poll: Florida State, Clemson, Miami, 1, 2, 3. Break down, I guess, the top of this conference. What's your pecking order, 1 through 3 or 1 through 5?
Well, it's definitely Florida State and Clemson, I think, 1 and 2. And then it kind of gets muddled in the middle. It's going to be interesting to see where NC State ranks amongst the top 5. Miami probably is 3, but I could very easily see NC State actually being 3. That depends on how good the Wolfpack are with Grayson McCall. I mean, those are the 2 toughest games on Syracuse's schedule this year, NC State and Miami. And then it kind of gets really, really hard to pick out a number 5 out of everyone in between. You could go Syracuse, you could even go Virginia Tech or Georgia Tech, who are going to be very, very sleeper teams as well to maybe make a run at one of the top spots in the conference. And while a lot of people have seen Syracuse's schedule and noted that it's a pretty easy schedule, that doesn't mean that every single game is just going to be a cakewalk. You still got those tough teams like NC State and Miami with the preseason ACC Player of the Year and Cam Ward. So it's going to be very, very tough in a way that I don't think Syracuse fans are expecting, especially with some of the talent that can be present and how much volatility there is right now in this ACC conference.
All right, so with all that being said, Christian, give us your prediction on the year. Give us how many wins and, the area you think Syracuse finishes in the ACC conference.
It's really funny. For Noon's Magician, we just did, along with one of my co-writers, we just did a lot of season sims on EA College Football 25. We did 10 sims each, and it averaged out to about 8 wins per season. And with a couple of outliers here and there, we had a couple of 10-win seasons. I had a horrible sim where there was a 4-win season, which I don't think anyone wants to see. But I think the 8 wins is just about right for Syracuse because there are so many 50-50 games this year. And when you think of like Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, you could even call NC State and Miami coin flip games just based on how hot or not those teams come into those games. And you can't forget, upstarts like, even a Stanford or even Boston College, who's got a lot of momentum with Bill O'Brien. I think the key to Syracuse getting back to a bowl is going to come down to the new coaching staff and how they can make mid-game adjustments. And we'll learn a lot more about how this actual coaching staff can coach. We already know they can recruit. Can they actually coach on the field? That could be the key to getting above 7-8 wins.
Yeah, well said. And I'm right there with you. I think 8 wins. I think that's where it's at going into this season. Christian, thanks so much for coming on. Great stuff. Enjoy the start of camp, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, guys.
Christian DeGuzman, writer for Noon's Magician. And with that, we'll hit a timeout. We will wrap up hour number 1 next on ESPN Radio.